Movement has the biggest deals of the holiday season and the sleekest watches around. Whether you're gifting for family, friends, or yourself, shop 30 to 60% off Movement's variety of designs, colorways, and functionalities. From the thinnest automatic dress watch under $500 to waterproof guarantee adventure-ready sport watches to rare ceramics. Be the good gifter this year. Shop 30 to 60% off now at movement.com and enjoy fast and free shipping. That's MVMT.com.
I think it was last year or the year before, having a conversation with someone that I grew up with. And it was just like that first realization that that we had grown apart, like that something was different between us, and it was like realizing that my faith is not the same that it was, and like how hard that is to realize that you have completely like shifted away from what you grew up in, or what you found so comforting at one time of your life, and that doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for what it gave me in that time. I needed that kind of faith for whatever reason growing up, and that kind of structure helped me so much to become who I am today. But growing out of that, and then realizing that if I want to be a healthier version of myself, like, I have to deconstruct.
Welcome to the Deconstructionist podcast, everybody. How's it going out there?
Guys, it's the holiday season. We have another treat for you.
We have an emerging voice here that we are proud to get out there. Not that we're the first, and we certainly won't be the last, but we connected with this brilliant thinker and speaker and writer on Twitter, and a bunch of you guys who are listeners suggested this guest, and I'm really looking forward to rolling this interview out. Who do we got here today, John?
We have Kaitlin B. Curtice, and she has one of the most impressive book jackets I've ever seen.
It's really great.
She's got shout-outs by Rachel Held Evans, Richard Rohr, Brian McLaren, and Rachel Macy Stafford. I was like, dang, girl.
Dang on. And you know what? For good reason, too, because as you guys are going to see in this interview, you've got just a very genuine person on a very authentic, personal journey and calling. And it's no question why people want to hear what she has to say, and so did we. So we phoned her up and recorded some convo here that you guys are going to get to listen to, and we cover a lot of things. What are some of the things you think people are going to find interesting about this?
Well, for one thing, she's kind of in our age group or whatever. So it's these days not as hard finding somebody who has gone through what we would call a deconstruction, or has entered into the journey, if you will. But what's really interesting and unique about her is that she's really kind of, I guess, experienced for the first time her Native American roots.
Yeah.
And what does that mean in the context of going through a Christian sort of deconstruction? And so she has this really cool journey, and she's kind of, I think you'll hear throughout the interview, kind of melded the two together in this really cool, unique way.
Yep.
Where, any listeners out there who know anything about Native American spirituality and just the connection that they have to the earth and that sort of thing, I think is just really cool and really unique. And I think her story is really cool. And I think a lot of people identify with it, and maybe perhaps learn some things about Native American spirituality and some other things. So
yeah, absolutely. So definitely go pick up her book. It's very encouraging. A whole bunch of essays. It's called Glory Happening, Finding the Divine in Everyday Places. I mean, come on, people. We can all get down with that, right?
And I think it just came out.
Yeah, totally just came out. So we are proud to introduce a lot of you to Kaitlin freaking Curtice. All right, well, Kaitlin freaking Curtice, welcome to the Deconstructionist Podcast.
Thank you.
So for those of you that aren't as familiar with your work, tell folks a little bit about your background and how you came into the work that you do today.
All right. Let's see here. I am living in Atlanta with my husband and our two boys. And I've been writing for about 5 years now. So I have a book coming out this fall. So I got published, I guess it's been about a year ago, and just had a blog for a while and was just kind of processing spirituality and parenthood and, a lot of changes. And then that just kind of bled into writing more and more. And now I write a lot about being Native American and being a Christian and how those worlds are kind of colliding and coming together and what that looks like. So,
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a really unique perspective and one that we haven't had the opportunity to really address on our show. So we're really, really happy to have you here. But so maybe tell people a little bit about that. I looked up some information about your tribe, and so tell people a little bit about your background as far as that goes and how that kind of informed your Christianity.
Yeah. So I am Potawatomi Citizen Band, and we are from Oklahoma. So that's my tribe, and I'm an enrolled member of this tribe. So my family is on the tribal rolls, and it's through my dad's side of the family. So I was born in Oklahoma, grew up there. My father worked for the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which means he was a police officer, and he was hired basically to police other natives and to police tribes, areas where there are native people. So I grew up living in Oklahoma and New Mexico, kind of going back and forth. And when I was 9, we moved to Missouri, and my parents got divorced, and my dad left. And so it was kind of broke off any roots that had started taking place in me with my cultural identity. And so, from like 9 on, and we also grew up in a Christian home. So I've always been in a Christian home as well. So those kind of, from 9 through my kind of teen years, I was pretty much just like a Southern Baptist, like white girl, just kind of like living the life, going to the True Love Waits rallies. And,
Yes.
and then as an adult a few years ago, it was kind of like God was like, oh, hey, you're Potawatomi, and so are your children. And I want you to, find out what that means. And so it just kind of was like, flipped a switch, and I just couldn't turn it off. And I'm so glad. And so I've just been learning about my tribe, learning our culture, learning our stories. And since I'm a writer, that's coming out through my writing. And so I have a book coming out, and I'm working on a second one, and just kind of processing, what does it mean to be a Native American Christian in our country, with all of our history and with the church that is, in the name of God, done atrocious things to my ancestors. So, so here I am.
Amazing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, maybe there's not a ton to share. Maybe it is just as simple as, you just felt, a nagging or something. But when you said that you really just started to feel this, like you had to, connect to your heritage and connect that to your faith and your voice, like, what did that look like? Like, how did that start to feel? Like you starting to get drawn to something about your past? Like, can you tell us a little bit more about that? I think there's some fascinating stuff there.
Yeah, for sure. So there definitely were like things in my life that were starting to change, and I felt myself sort of transforming slowly. My husband, who is not Native, he has always loved nature. Like that's just like being outside and finding God outside has always been really important to him. And so I've learned a lot from him in that over the years we've been married, but I felt it changing inside of me finally, like just seeing things that I wasn't noticing before. And so one day we were out hiking here in Georgia. There are a lot of native sites. And so you can go to the Chattahoochee River and you can like read about what tribes once lived there. And so it's really amazing because there's in Civil War history even, there's just so much history here. And so we were hiking at this place called Sweetwater Creek, and my youngest son, Isaiah, was like one and a half at the time. And I was still, breastfeeding him, and he got hungry and I had to feed him, and we're like hiking. So I awkwardly was like, okay, I'm just going to like feed my baby while I'm hiking and hope that no one walks by and, get terrified. So I just kind of like did that. And then, we're just walking and I'm feeding him. And all of a sudden it was just like, God stopped me and said, this is what your ancestors did on the trail of death. Like, this is what the women in your lineage had to do with their babies. Like, they walked. The trail of death is the Potawatomi version of the Trail of Tears. So you've heard of the Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
The Potawatomi tribe walked the Trail of Death. So that was our journey. And so it was just, God was just like stopped time, it felt like, and said, you need to know who you come from, and you need to know as a woman who you come from, and that you have children and you are being called back, And so, so it literally, it was like, a switch turning on in me. And we got back in the car and I just wrote it all down. I just started writing.
Wow.
And so, and that's just, it hasn't ever gone away. And it's,
Was it something you thought much about before that?
Yeah. I mean, I have my, tribal roles card. I've had it, always had it, since I was little when I went and got it. And so it's this little ID, that shows you're on the tribal roles. And throughout college, I got, like scholarships and money to help put me through college. But I never knew what it meant. I never, since we didn't practice a lot culturally. And then when my parents divorced, it just was gone, so it wasn't anything that I understood. I kind of just thought like, oh, I just grew up in a poor part of Oklahoma and like, that's where I'm from. But I didn't realize like, I'm from this group of people. I have this heritage. Like it never clicked for me, until then.
Amazing.
As somebody with a background in history, excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold from last week. So
makes your radio voice sound great, though, John.
It does. It drops another octave, so it's good. But you got to keep clearing your throat, and that's not good radio. But anyway, I know you and I were talking, a few weeks ago, and in preparation for our talk tonight, I was kind of looking up some information about your tribe and kind of. Where they originated, and they were a Great Plains tribe that were kind of shoved into like the Wisconsin, Illinois area, and then off into like Oklahoma and some of the western states. And it's pretty typical of the way that the Native American peoples were treated by these imperialist, European, conquerors essentially. And so I know, like, you and I kind of joked a little bit about, Christopher Columbus, and obviously we are located in the city named after him, and not a lot of people know, the history behind this guy. He's kind of revered as this hero, and you wrote this really amazing article or blog rather, kind of about that. And initially I was just like, oh, this is a really cool article. It kind of alludes to some of the actual history that not a lot of people are aware of, but probably should be. But it's about a much bigger issue than that, right? So it's about the conversations that as a country that we tend to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe talk about that a little bit, like how you mentioned in that article that a lot of things like this, we need to start talking about, and specifically the church is silent on a lot of these types of issues.
Yeah. I'm amazed because, I grew up, like I was in the public school system. I learned the same, history that all of us have learned. And so even I don't know so many things that I should know, as an Indigenous person. Like you would think that I would have more knowledge of things. And I grew up, doing the same, in 1492, right. I know it's the same. And it didn't even hit me that should actually go against who I am.
Wow.
It didn't, I didn't think about it until I was older. And yeah, I just I'm really amazed at how little people know of Indigenous culture and I've noticed, like, when I tell people I'm Potawatomi, or I start telling them about my tribe, it's almost like people are surprised that we're still alive. I think sometimes people view, they're thinking of those stories in the history books, and they're thinking of the cowboys and the Indians, or, the pilgrims and the Indians. Like it's almost, like those stories are stuck in history, and we're like relics, we're like past relics, And so it's really been eye-opening for me as I learn about my tribe and I share it with other people, especially in the church, that they're like, I had no idea, or, oh wow, you have a really beautiful culture, or like your creation story is beautiful, or, just things that I'm learning myself. And I'm just amazed at how silent it's been, how complicit, that silence is complicit in everything that's happened, and I understand, because it's uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable, for me to say, oh, here's actually what happened. Like, let's talk about it now. That's, people get offended easily. People get kind of that, like, this, I didn't do that. My ancestors may have been like that, but I'm not like that. And like, it's hard to have those conversations. And so, I taught at my last church, I taught a class on the medicine wheel to this group of people. And they were, the most gracious listeners. They were just ready to listen and learn. Like they just wanted to know so much. And so that was a wonderful place for me to begin sharing, because they didn't question where I was getting my information, or they didn't make me feel like they weren't listening, like they were truly listening. And, yeah, that was great. But I think we have to have more of those kinds of sessions where oppressed people can share their truth, and those on the other side can listen, and just listen, not even respond sometimes, just simply listen and acknowledge it,
No, absolutely. I think that one of the things that we initially only set out to do on this show was just try to facilitate more listening. Like, imagine that as a part of a beautiful future, like where people could just say, well, hang on, before I just dismantle that, or before I call that thing my enemy, or that viewpoint my enemy, or whatever, or before I get defensive, maybe I should just chill out and listen first, and try to see something from see this from another perspective. We're totally jiving with you on that. It's so hard. It's so hard. Nobody wants to do it, if we're going to be honest, naturally.
One of the things that I really like that you said there too is that it reminds me of an Albert Einstein quote where he says, I think it was Albert Einstein. He says, if I were to remain silent, I'd be guilty of complicity. And I think that's so apropos of the modern age. There are so many things going around, and I think we've talked about on the podcast before. The advent of technology allows us to see things as they happen,
Right.
and it's very, very hard, since everyone has a camera phone now, to hide atrocities that are happening across the globe. And yet, I especially, because I identify with Christianity, I find it offensive that there aren't more Christians who are appalled and standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. And I think you speak to that really well, especially in a lot of the blog articles that I've read. So the other question I had, and you mentioned this, is you talk about the Native American creation story that you learned. How has learning more about your spiritual roots through who you are as a Native American, how has that affected the Christianity that you were born and raised in?
Well, it definitely has broken down the Americanized Christianity that I grew up in, and has made me realize, I think, Mark Charles, he talks a lot about, we've always been a country where it's been like empire has been mixed with God. It's all from the beginning, these things were done in the name of God, and boarding schools were, Christian or religious run boarding schools. And so all these atrocities that have happened were so often done in the name of God, in the name of, salvation. And so that kind of idea of Christianity, I've been deconstructing, or decolonizing, I call it.
Yes.
So I've been decolonizing my faith. But what I've found and has been just so beautiful is that my nativeness and my native faith just so beautifully aligns with the stories of Jesus and the Bible, and so beautifully aligns with, who I see God as. And it has never felt inside of me. It has never felt like these things are at war. What has been at war is me and America, or me and, evangelicalism, or me and the Southern Baptist Church. I don't fit there anymore. I don't fit in those institutions anymore. And so that has been difficult to suddenly see myself as a person of color, as an Indigenous person, when, a few years ago you would look at me and I just look white, so no one thinks anything of it. But when you see me, speaking out and being honest about it, then it really, shifts everything. So the culture is really hard. The church culture can be really difficult, but the richness of who God is, and welcoming me and, loving my people and always loving people, they've always been welcomed into the fold of God.
I need an ambulance. I took the worst of the blow. Send me a redeemer. Let me know if I'm gonna be alright. Am I gonna be alright? 'Cause I know how
So good. I think so much of so many thoughts on that. Like, first of all, I love what you said, that this doesn't, with the Jesus the God that there's no problem here, that that it aligns beautifully, it aligns perfectly. There's so much continuity there. I think that the trouble we get into, and we've gotten into over and over again, is when we stop looking at the beautiful, mysterious person and spirit that we encounter in our faith, and we, erect a system around it.
Right.
That has to have a certain level of explanatory power in order for us to continue to feel confident, because that's what we think faith is. And we then are challenged when somebody says, well, I can't tell you how many times, Kaitlin, this is the first time I've actually, tragically enough, spoken with a native about matters of faith. I've never gotten the opportunity to do that until now. But, it's always kind of that thing that people throw out there, like, well, what about the Native Americans that never heard about Jesus? And because of the system that I was worshiping, right? Because it wasn't God, it wasn't the Spirit, it wasn't, what Christ would have shown me to do with that kind of question. It was like, oh, shoot, I don't know, you got me. Because, they didn't know how to confess with their mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in their heart that God raised him from the dead, so I guess they're screwed.
Yeah.
And it's gross. And I just love what you're saying about that. Did you have some of those realizations too? Am I just on my island over here?
No, what are you talking about? I'm just kidding.
Shoot.
Yeah. All of it. And it's like the same realizations over and over. Like, it's like some mornings I wake up and think, oh my God, like, I can't believe I grew up thinking that, or, or it's not even, it's not like my family even, talked about these things out loud, these rules, or this is how you view God. It's not even that my pastors, growing up had to even say it blatantly. It's just the underlying tone of our religion in America is all of that kind of stuff, like it's just wired into it to the core. And when you finally break out of that, you just see it so clearly, and it's so appalling,
It's so appalling. It really is. The other thing that really struck me when you were talking is how you talked about how, a lot of what you call attention to makes people uncomfortable. And just a thought on that is, I don't know of a situation, either in scripture or in church history or, any of these kinds of places that overlap, where a voice for the minority or a voice for the oppressed within a system of power that has to speak that truth. Like you said, I just have to be honest about, what I see and where I'm at and, what's going on. That voice for that, calling attention to that makes people uncomfortable. It's making people uncomfortable because at the end of the day, we want the power to continue to work for us.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, you're right on the side with the minor prophets and Jesus and prophets not without honor, right?
Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, it's something that, yeah, I mean, do you think about those kinds of things when you're...
Yeah, I do. Let's see, a few weeks ago, I was in New Mexico, at a retreat with Richard Rohr. He was our teacher. And, so there were like 75 of us, and Richard was, we were having these sessions with him. So he's talking about all his work, and he mentioned a few times the work of prophets. And then, later when I got home, the Center for Action and Contemplation that he has, like, they send out daily emails from him, and
oh yeah,
and I follow him on Twitter, so I see all the little, and so he was sharing them that next week, and they were all, I think each day was focused on some aspect of being a prophet, and it was just really kind of just soothing for me to just sit in that, like, to realize that the work of being prophetic is really painful and hard and really beautiful all at the same time, because you're seeing some things that people don't always see, which is the beautiful part. But then you're having to call it out, and that's the painful thing. And so, yeah, it's interesting. And being a writer, it's interesting too, just because you're putting it down in a book, or you're, like, storytelling is so important to our culture. It's more verbal, of course, but now those are all written down. And so as I'm, as a storyteller, I'm seeing everything through the lens of story. And that's how traditions are built, is through storytelling, like all traditions, you have these old stories, and that's how the people you belong to and where you come from,
Yeah, absolutely. But being that voice has obviously got to take a toll. It's not easy. It's not fun, to feel like you're swimming upstream or speaking truth to power. Like, what are some of the parts that you find most difficult about that personally?
The energy, it has been really draining of my energy. I remember when, so right after, like a year after I kind of had that realization, Standing Rock happened. And then, so with Standing Rock, I didn't get to go, but I watched live feeds just constantly. I just had them going constantly, because it was the first time in my life that I literally felt the, like, heartache of knowing that my ancestors, like, went through all of this, and, like, those are the people I belong to. And so the first day I realized that, just like weeping, like finally just like breaking and weeping, like really crying and just letting out, kind of a catharsis of all the stuff I had been building up and holding in. And so every few months I have that moment where I just need to, like, have a good cry and, like, get it out, because I'm an optimist. Like, I'm not a person who's prone to depression or being super sad, or I just don't, I'm just not wired that way. And so often I kind of sit on the higher end of, like, let's make it better. Like, let's get something done. I'm like,
charge.
I'm going to tell you a story, and you're going to like it, and we're going to move forward, and, but every now and then I have to sit in the, like, really crappy part. And, like, I have to hear about another Indigenous person who's, killed, or another missing woman, or, like all of these, things that just come back around. And I realize, like, how much of a toll it takes on me every day. But, when I'm at home and my boys and I are trying to learn our language online. And so, we're in our office, like watching these Potawatomi videos for kids of like dancing bears, and they're singing like songs in Potawatomi. And I'm like, this is great. Like we're doing this, and that's not the heavy part. Like that's the really beautiful part. And so I think that fuels me for when I have to sit down and write things that are hard or have hard conversations,
That's good.
One of the things I've heard you talk about is when we engage in conversation about tough issues like Standing Rock, for example. You've made the point that so often the conversation that happens occurs in a way where the conversation is about the issue, but doesn't actually engage the people that it affects. I was wondering if you could unpack that a little.
Yeah. I think a lot of it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that that we kind of view Native people through that lens of history and like events that happened. Like on for Indigenous Peoples Day the other day, I did a thread on Twitter, and I was like, these are some of my favorite things right now. Like, if you're gonna get some wild rice for Thanksgiving, like order it from these people, and like if you wanna know about like Native music, like watch these videos of these artists that I love, or and I just gave, if you want to know more about the medicine wheel, like here's a really cool website that tells you about it. And I think people really are hungry for like tangible things. If you instead of buying that like $4 t-shirt at Target that has a like fake Navajo print, like why don't you actually find an artist who's Indigenous and thank them for their work and like buy that from them, just things that are tangible, that the church, like, or anybody, like, we can do this. So like, it shouldn't be conversations where we meet and we have these really tough conversations and then we all leave having no idea what to do because it was so overwhelming. And that's what happens a lot. And I don't want to leave people with that, so it's like also equipping people to know like what to do next and to see that these are communities who are thriving, who are still alive, and we're trying to retain our languages, or trying to teach our children our cultures, and it's hard, but for people to actually see us as people and as cultures that are alive today, I think, and then be willing to step into those realities would, I think, change a lot for us.
It's really good. Just got me thinking a little bit, like, sitting here and just doing this little podcast project, this hobby that John and I have. Originally, we started this because we felt like, in a much different way, but with some similarities on a different level, people in churches, or people that want to be associated with churches or spirituality, but find themselves difficult to label, or they find themselves in positions that are more gray or more doubting or questioning or things like that. Because the structures that we have in place in religion favor those who are, fanatical, or favor those who are very, very sure, very, very certain, don't have a lot of those conversations. We found that we were actually starting to speak for something of a minority that were oppressed is maybe a strong word, but that felt like they were lost in this power structure, and they didn't have a voice, they didn't have a place, and they didn't have a home, and they didn't have all those kinds of things. And I've noticed in a lot of your writing that you resonate with that group of people too. And you've even written blogs on, you call it decolonization, but I loved your blog. It's okay to deconstruct your American faith. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your story and a little bit about like some of the content in that blog that you wrote that was really powerful, and I think gave voice to so many people's struggle.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, having a conversation with someone that I grew up with, and it was just like that first realization that that we had grown apart, like that something was different between us, and it was like realizing that my faith is not the same that it was, and and like how hard that is to realize that you have completely like shifted away from what you grew up in, or what you found so comforting at one time of your life, you know. And that doesn't mean that I'm not grateful for what it gave me in that time. You know, I needed that kind of faith for whatever reason growing up, and that kind of structure helped me so much to become who I am today. But growing out of that, and then realizing that if I want to be a healthier version of myself, like I have to deconstruct. And it's been interesting on Twitter. Like there's so many people I've met that are doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. And Twitter is just this funny. I've had a Twitter account for like 4 years, and I always hated Twitter until like 6 months ago. And I was like, I'm writing a book. I should probably start using Twitter. And then it was just like, oh my God, like all these amazing people who are following me and like asking me to tell them my story, and like really wanting to know. And that just like blew me away. But it made me realize the same thing, that there are a lot of us who are doing the same thing, or deconstructing things. And I mean, I can't, I also wrote a piece, like I'm really uncomfortable with the Bible right now, because I have to read each story, every story I come across, I have to then pull it out of the American lens and then look at it again in a different lens, to try to figure out how I'm feeling about it.
So hard to do.
Yeah, it's really hard. And I'm not a, Bible scholar in the first place. So I don't have, I'm still a very like childlike Bible reader. I just always have been. And so it's not like I don't have all this knowledge to go along with it, but yeah, I just, I've had so many other people who, like you said, are in the same boat, and we've got to go somewhere to process that, or have some safe place to tell our stories and to figure out where to go next. So,
yeah, it's amazing.
To shift gears a little bit, there's a another blog article that you wrote that I really, really enjoyed, and I thought it was very, very timely. And it was the blog article that you wrote about how to face tragedy, and I felt like at any point in time, this was the perfect time for you to write that piece. There's, shall we say, lots of inspiration with what seems like a world that's gone crazy around us, whether it's, politics or weather disasters or whatever the case may be. I know there are a lot of people out there who are just struggling to make sense of just what seems like just chaos. And one of the things that you talk about is ways to combat this. So how do we combat this never-ending wave of crazy and engage in what you call self-care?
Yeah, good question. Sometimes I don't really know. So one thing that I've noticed for me, like that I have to do, which is, my upcoming book, like this is exactly what it was born out of, is that I needed, I have to be like tethered to everyday things, like tangible things, just to like stay sane and feel rooted in this kind of craziness. Because if I'm just like reading the news all day, and like, I mean, I literally get so overwhelmed and anxious with that, that I can't sit in that all day. And I know a lot of people are the same way. A lot of people are having trouble sleeping and are exhausted and have high blood pressure, and like people who normally don't, and it's just, we're in such a crazy time where people are so just like outraged over everything. And we have to be able to step back and like care for ourselves. And so for me, that means going on a hike with my kids, or, just stopping to have a cup of coffee and turning off the computer. And it's really hard. It's really hard actually to step away and be present in whatever reality we have. But I think that helps us so much. Just to stay tethered to the realities of God outside of that chaos, and also inside of it, I guess. So, knowing that God is in our midst, like right here and now, so that we can be filled back up again to go back to the really crappy things that happen in the world. And we have to have that, or it just gets worse and worse. And then we're a bunch of unhealthy people who are all trying to, I don't know, fix whatever it is and end up yelling at each other even more probably.
Shift the current,
I think just like what you said, just being deliberate, like there's a deliberateness to the things that you were saying. Like I think so many people feel out of control because they're not doing anything deliberate, you know? And so much of what you said sounded so simple, like take a walk, have a cup of coffee, have, you know, some quiet time, not quiet time in the Southern Baptist biblical
right.
sense, but like
make a distinction.
Like I'm actually saying quiet time, just be quiet. But it's so funny because we laugh about this because it's like, well, that's too easy. Well, then why can't you do it?
Yeah.
You know, none of us can. It's so hard. I was in a routine, getting up early, just having time of quiet for a while, and some crap hit the fan, and you know, I'm sick, and you start sleeping in, and oh my gosh, you're out of your routine, and you're not doing it anymore, and oh, the blood pressure's creeping up, and oh, the crazy wave is hitting you time and time again, and just the last few mornings, I did it again for just like maybe 15 minutes, and I was like, oh yes.
Mm-hmm.
Just being deliberate. Do something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. Let's talk about your book. You got to be pretty stoked about that.
I am. I'm very excited.
So you've got one book out right now, and you said you made mention, I don't know if it was before we started recording, so let's make sure we mention it again, just in case.
Yes.
You have another book coming out in the fall, but the book that you have out now is called Glory Happening, Finding the Divine in Everyday Places. Maybe tell us a little bit about the book and what your goal is for this book.
Yeah. So this one is coming out November 7th, and I'm writing the second one that I hope someday will get published. So, Glory Happening is, it's a book of 50 kind of essays or, short stories, I guess, from my life. And each one I wrote a prayer that goes with that story. And so basically it's just, I'm reflecting on what the glory of God is. Because I remember when I was little thinking about like the glory of God, I thought of like the clouds with the sunshine coming out behind them. And I was like, wow, so majestic, God. And I just like, there's nothing on that. Like, I have no idea what the glory of God is. So one day I was in my kitchen and I was like, what does the word glory mean? Like, this is really interesting. Like, I like definitions a lot. So
yeah, for sure.
I looked it up and it, one of the definitions is like something that is beautiful, that's extremely beautiful. And I was like, well, I mean, I experience that all the time. Like I see beauty in so many different things. So if the glory of God can be that, then it can be a lot of other things as well. And so I just started looking up, different concepts of glory, like in the Bible.
Yeah.
And started thinking about, even in really painful seasons of my life, like I still felt the glory of God or the presence of God with me, and so I just started writing these stories, and it was really fun. Like it came really easy, and it was almost like journaling, and I loved it. I loved writing it. And so I'm really excited that someone wanted to publish it, and it's crazy that I have a book coming out. It's
amazing. And I think in a world that, we get so lost, wasn't it Rob Bell that said we're passing burning bushes all the time, but we missed it because we're texting somebody or looking at a screen or, I feel like there's some resonance in that way of thinking with, what you're talking about, like glory being something every day, but like, we don't have eyes to see it anymore.
Right.
So what are some of the kind of standout moments where you started to realize that, glory is happening all around us?
Well, we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay. So we have a giant husky and 2 young boys at the time who were just starting to like learn how to like really fight with each other and scream a lot. And so in this tiny apartment, and my husband's, he had just started his PhD program. And so he was just like brain fried every day, like so tired, you know, and then our two boys are just running around screaming, and I'm hanging out with them, and just like, it was just, it was an insane season. And all of a sudden I just was so like grateful to be in it. And not that it wasn't hard, but it was just really good. I just loved it. And I think it was for Mother's Day one year, the guys all went and got me a bunch of plants for our balcony, because I really wanted to have plants, because it's Georgia, so the sun, if it shines anywhere, you'll grow something. So I put a bunch of plants in these pots and containers, and we just had them all over this balcony, and I would just go sit out there and drink my coffee, and the boys would just play. And I don't know, it was just this really sacred space. And I just started reading more books, and finding myself, you know, more of a mystic, I guess, than I have been before. And then, you know, that kind of coinciding with who I was trying to figure out who I was as a Native woman. And so all of that just kind of coming alive in me, and processing it basically through these stories. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I love it. I'm sure you're familiar. I think you might have even referenced it. The Weight of Glory, the C.S. Lewis episode or essay. Did you read that? Did you reference that, or am I crossing?
I may have.
I can't remember. I thought I maybe read that in one of your.
I think so.
I love, because so much of what you're saying and so much of what I read in what you wrote made me think of that. Maybe that's what it was. I can't remember. But his whole idea of beauty being something that's calling us to something deeper. You know, it's the music that we're remembering again from, you know, the symphony we've never heard, but we know we have, or, you know, that landscape that we know we've seen somewhere before, but we haven't. You know, it's that higher up and further in. It's this promise of more. And I think one of the cool things about what you're doing is you're inspiring people to notice it, that it's right there. Like it's probably wherever you are right now, there's a glimpse of it, if you can see it. And I think that work is so important. I think that what you're doing is so important, especially since you're resonating with people that are doing, you know, quote unquote deconstruction, which we have a very love-hate relationship with that word. But when you think about it, you know, when your concepts of God are crumbling, and then somebody comes along to remind you that it's over here too.
Right.
And it's not just in that place where you always thought you found it, but it's in those plants on the balcony. You know, it's in watching your kids play. It's in the insanity, in the mess, and maybe even in the wave of crazy that's hitting you, if you can figure out how to see it.
Right.
Oh, I think that's such important work, pointing out the burning bushes. So I want to congratulate you for that, and
thanks.
And hopefully you just keep doing it, because it's needed. Yeah.
Well, we're running short on time here, but we wanted to first of all just thank you for being on the show. Adam and I, you know, have been following you on Twitter for a while, and following a lot of your writings. I know I've read quite a bit because you write for Sojourners. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell people where they can find your blog and some of your other writings, and when your new book comes out.
Yeah, we are Kaitlin Curtice fans.
So let's see, I have a blog. It's KaitlinCurtice.com, and you can just, you know, pick a way to spell that, and maybe
they'll find it in our show notes, or hopefully if they look at the episode. Yeah.
You know what to do. And then, I write for Sojourners a lot, and I've loved writing for them so much. And then I also have a Pathos Progressive Christian page. And so that has a lot of the same pieces that are on my blog, but there are a few that are also just on that site. And I'm, you know, for next year, I'm booking speaking engagements. So I would love to be able to speak at churches, or just speak to groups of people about, basically, I just want to tell stories. And and just have a like storytelling session, and then have that kind of create space to have these conversations. So yeah, I'm booking events right now. That's all on my website, and yeah, definitely. If people want to follow me on Twitter, I'm on there a lot now that I've figured out how to use it.
You're doing great. You're a blast to follow on Twitter.
Well,
Thanks.
the book is called Glory Happening, Finding the Divine in Everyday Places, and it comes out, if I'm reading this correctly, November 7th. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
So check it out. Yeah, we'll definitely put it in the show notes. We definitely highly recommend people go out and get it, and hopefully Adam and I are working on the initial concepts for a live event or a live tour ourselves. So we'd love to connect with you. Hopefully we can plan something near your neck of the woods. So
yeah, I'd love that.
It'd be so fun.
Well, thank you so much for taking some time out. I know we try to plan these in the evening, so it's always tough to take time away from the family. So thank your husband and your kids too. But thanks for talking with us tonight, and we hopefully will reconnect with you soon.
Thank you, Kaitlin.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So much fun. Dude, that was just I felt like I was just talking to a friend that I didn't know I had. It was so comfortable. She's just got such a soft but strong way of approaching these things. And you know what I like the most? There's something that really, I'm going to have to think about this a lot more after this. We use the word deconstruction, which she uses also in some of her blogs, but she likes better the term decolonization.
I like that.
Of your faith. Because if you think about, especially with her Native American roots and some of the contemplating that she's done and reflection that she's done, that's a lot of what we're trying to peel away to get to a real space where something, authentic can be built, is getting away from this just kind of cookie cutter colonization, empire-driven power structure that looks, antithetical, honestly, to the community that Jesus was trying to put together. So I really, really appreciate that. I think she's just got so many good things to say. I hope everybody goes out and picks up this book.
Well, and the other thing I really like about her too is that, and I guess what I like about modern technology and that sort of thing is that she's also an avid blogger. So if you go to KaitlinCurtice.com, I don't know why that was so hard to say, but really hard to say. But if you go to her website, she also writes for Sojourners as well.
Yeah.
But if you go to her website, she's an avid blogger as well. And so it's one of these things where you can get a glimpse of what she's thinking in the moment. And she's written recently, there's some really exceptional blog posts that she's written just about like things that are happening, in the world today around us and responding to those things.
Yeah.
And I think she's got a great voice. And I think I
agree.
I look forward to see what comes out of her in the future.
Ditto.
So
we're gonna have to get her to do a blog, like maybe a guest blog for us sometime. We should ask her before we put this on the air, but now she has to.
Now she's pressured. Do you feel pressured, Kaitlin? You should.
Yeah.
Now you got to do it.
Because if you guys didn't know, we've been talking about it a lot, but we do have a completely revamped website, www.deconstructionist.com, and you can find our Patreon there. One cool thing about our Patreon is the book club. People are really digging that. We curate books. We can have discussions about those books. We send them out to everybody at the same time every month. And I'm really excited to send out the next one for next month. So if you can't read a book a month, well, be a Patreon anyway.
Or if you can't read a book a month, but you just want to stockpile books over the course of the year and then go on one vacation and just drown yourself in books.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it.
Build a little library, but
bag of books
from $1, all the way up. There's really cool stuff. We don't want this to be about the money. We want it to be a way for you guys to connect and get some cool new stuff. And it's just kind of like a way of saying, putting your hand up and saying, yeah, I'd like to connect in some different ways, some new ways. Here's some new stuff, and we've got other projects coming. You guys are fueling lots of other cool stuff that we're hoping brings a lot of encouragement and excitement to wherever you're at on your spiritual journey, as well as just a connection of community. So
yeah,
thanks for everybody that's getting involved in that.
Yeah, thanks for supporting us. Again, we are working on a live tour. hopefully this spring. And so if that is something that would be of interest to you, couple things that would help us out in a huge way. Number one, help spread the word in your local city, town, whatever. Get other people on board with listening to the podcast, because obviously the more people we have supporting it, the more likelihood that we'll be able to actually support a live event in your neck of the woods.
Yep.
So if you live in a city or a town where you think that other people might benefit from this or might be interested in it, help spread the word about the podcast. That's the biggest thing that we can say.
Yep.
Number two, the other big way that helps us get exposure is 5-star reviews on iTunes. As weird as that sounds, with that new updated app, like you can just click on the 5 stars. It helps us.
Whole algorithm thing.
It's weird.
It's so weird.
So yeah, so like for whatever reason, the more 5-star reviews you get on iTunes, the more chart time that you get, the more visible your podcast is. For whatever reason, unknown to mankind, because iTunes won't tell anyone the secret.
I wouldn't either if I was them, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because then everybody's just going to manipulate it.
Look, we don't necessarily care about being on the charts. That's not like something that's ever been important to us. As long as we are creating a podcast that benefits someone out there, that's all we care about. However, like it does help us get exposure and helps more people find us and that sort of thing. So if you have a couple seconds and you can leave us a review, that is hugely beneficial. So thank you guys. If you've already done it, if you can take a few seconds to do it though, that would be helpful.
Yep. We understand how so much of this is, at times an awkward conversation. And, we know we have a lot of call them like closet listeners or whatever.
Yeah.
I would have been in the past, but if you're getting to a point where you want to have some real conversation about this, you might have to start telling people that you're a listener.
Yeah.
And then you'll actually get some real conversation. But we understand sometimes if that's uncomfortable and you can't do it right away. But the more people that we talk about these kinds of things with, the more space we open up to see what's going to happen next.
Right. And in my effort to be more transparent and more consistent about the bands that are on each episode, I'm 2 for 2 now, Adam. I just want you to know that.
You're doing great.
Because in the past, I've either not said because I can't remember, because we record all of these in
advance.
Right. Or I'll list a band and then find out afterwards that I changed it last second.
Once or twice, and that's okay.
Once or twice. So I'm like, I'm sorry.
Human, John. You're
I'm
human.
so sorry.
You're human.
I feel worse for the bands, though. I'm so sorry.
I know.
But this week, I promise you, is a band called Isley.
Oh, yes.
Isley's been around for a while. They're super legit, and I've seen them at least once.
I've seen them once.
And they're super good live.
Oh, yeah. Family band.
Yeah.
Powerhouse.
Sisters, I
female
think, and
singer.
a cousin.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Like
yeah, really enjoyed that concert.
Super fun. So check them out. Check out our Spotify playlist and support the bands if you can. So at the very least, give them a shout out on social media. Tell them we sent you. Helps us get other bands in the future. So thanks, guys.
For now, wherever you're at, guys, thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging with us. Thanks for supporting us. We will talk to you again soon. We are your hosts. I'm Adam Narlock.
And I am John Williamson.
We will see you next time.